Hi, and welcome to my Spotlight talk, Aristotle on Why Women Make a Difference. What is sexual difference according to Aristotle? More precisely, what kind of a difference is sexual difference? And how does sexual difference relate to other kinds of difference, such as racial difference? In this talk, I tackle Aristotle's treatment of sexual difference from the point of view of his logic and metaphysics. Specifically, I would like to argue that while Aristotle takes sexual difference, that is the difference between man and woman, or in general between a female and a male animal, to be a weaker kind of difference than the anthropological difference, that is the difference between humans and non-human animals. Aristotle still takes sexual difference to be a stronger kind of difference than racial difference, that is the difference between, say, a white person and a person of color. In order to understand the claim that sexual difference is an intermediate form of difference between the so-called racial differences on the one hand and the anthropological difference on the other, I suggest to take a brief look at Aristotle's theory of predication. For Aristotle conceives of the difference between these three kinds of difference in terms of predication. In chapter 4 of book 1 of Aristotle's Posterior Analytics, which is all about scientific proof, Aristotle draws a systematic distinction between three kinds of predication: essential predication, accidental predication, and a third kind of predication in between these two. Aristotle there calls essential predication per se one predication, per se translating the Greek term kathauto, by virtue of itself, in itself, and one indicating that he has several senses of per se, namely a first and a second. So term A is per se one predicated, or predicated essentially, of term B, just in case A is contained in the definition of B. By contrast, term A is per se two predicated of B, just in case term B is contained in the definition of A. Moreover, term A is predicated accidentally of term B, just in case neither A is contained in the definition of B, nor B is contained in the definition of A. This provides us with a neat and systematic classification of kinds of predication and each of the three kinds of difference that I identified earlier. The anthropological difference, sexual difference, and the so-called racial differences can be exhaustively and disjointly hosted by this classification of predications, as we shall see shortly. For instance, rational and animal are per se one predicated of human respectively, as each of these terms is contained in the definition of human, provided that the human being is defined as a rational animal. As pertains to per se two predications, the terms male and female are respectively per se two predicated of animal, since animal is contained in the definition of each of male and female. You cannot define female without mentioning animal in its definition. Moreover, examples of accidental predications are musical human, white human, walking human, and just anything that so happens to be the case without any necessity involved. In the Metaphysics, then, Aristotle argues that the way in which male and female are respectively predicated of animal, or equally of human, is not a case of per se one predication. The term rational, however, is per se one predicated of human, as rational is a part of the definition of human, as we saw. And that is the reason why the anthropological difference is essential to humans. But Aristotle also argues that the way in which male and female are respectively predicated of animal, or equally of human, is not a case of merely accidental predication either. The color attribute white is an accident of human because it is neither the case that all humans are white, nor is it the case that only humans are white. Thus, racial differences are entirely accidental to humans, according to Aristotle. Male and female animal, however, are neither cases of essential predication nor of accidental predication. Instead, Aristotle takes them to be instances of per se two predication. Female animal shares with accidental predication, such as musical person and white person, that they are not predicated universally of their respective subject. Not every animal or human is female, just like not every person is musical or white. However, and this is most crucial, female animal differs from white animal in that animal is contained in the definition of female, whereas animal is not contained in the definition of white. Since per se two predications, such as female-animal, are neither accidental nor essential predications, but rather something in between these two, Aristotle calls per se two predications also symbabikota kathauta, per se accidents. This shows that the per se accidents female and male have a stronger connection to the species human than plain accidents such as black and white. This in fact shows that Aristotle takes sexual difference to be stronger than racial difference. In order to also show that Aristotle takes sexual difference to be weaker than the anthropological difference, let us now turn to a related passage in Aristotle's Metaphysics. Chapter 9 of Book 10 of the Metaphysics contains an interesting argument for the view that female and male have a weaker connection to the species human than the essential attribute rational. Aristotle here expressly examines in what way sexual difference and racial difference differ from one another. His conclusion is that while racial difference is a merely accidental difference, racial difference in fact qualifies not even as a proper difference for Aristotle, sexual difference is indeed a proper difference but not one that constitutes different species. Aristotle explains that the reason why a white human and a black horse differ from one another in species is not because they are different with respect to color, but because they are different with respect to their common genus animal. Accordingly then, a white human and a black human are the same in species, regardless of any difference in their respective skin color. For the same reason, male human, also known as man, and female human, also known as woman, do not differ from one another in species. They are the same in species. By contrast, rational animal and non-rational animal do make a difference in species. And the reason for this difference between these kinds of difference lies in Aristotle's view that rational and non-rational divide the form of the genus animal, whereas male and female only divide the matter of animal. And this is to be understood as follows. That rational and non-rational divide the form of animal means that these differences divide the specific difference in the definition of animal. Accordingly, that male and female divide the matter of animal means that they divide the genus in the definition of the term animal. Provided animal is defined as a sensitive body, that means as a body possessing sense perception, the specific difference of form in the definition of the term animal is the term sensitive, right? Possessing sense perception, while the genus or matter of the term animal is the term body. Aristotle in fact argues that the difference rational divides not the genus but the specific difference in the definition of animal, that is the term sensitive, or having sense perception. However, the differences male and female do not divide the specific difference sensitive, but instead the genus in the definition of animal, that is, the term body. Since only the specific difference and form can produce a species, whereas the genus and matter cannot, the difference rational constitutes the species human when predicated of the genus animal, since rational is predicated of the specific difference of animal, whereas female does not produce any species when predicated of animal, since female is only predicated of the genus of animal, but not of the specific difference of animal. And that is the actual reason why sexual difference is not a difference in species. It is now time for my conclusion. Aristotle's theory of predication yields the following threefold division of differences. Firstly, white humans neither make a species nor a difference. Secondly, female humans, also known as women, make a difference but not a species. Thirdly, humans make both a difference and a species. While the anthropological difference is an essential and species constituting difference, the so-called racial differences are merely accidental features of humans. As I mentioned earlier, racial differences do not even qualify as proper differences for Aristotle. Sexual difference, however, is more than just an accidental feature, but it is also less than a species constituting difference. In Aristotle's logical and metaphysical framework, sexual difference is something intermediate between accidental and essential difference, and therefore remains very difficult to classify. Thank you for your attention.